My name is Joy Dahl. I'm an occupational therapist by training. Occupational therapists focus on things people do every day that are meaningful, so we help people do their daily activities, basically. Research tells us that 85% of kids with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder also have sensory processing disorder or sensory issues, which means that they can be hypersensitive to sensory experiences, like their clothing is uncomfortable to them, sounds bother them, they can't focus, or they can be hyposensitive, and those are your kids that unintentionally hurt other children or animals because they don't have good body awareness because of the damage in their brain from alcohol exposure. So they may break toys or hurt other children because of their lack of body awareness. So the role of OT is to go in and assess the child, meet with the family, and figure out what their sensory issues are, and then help develop often what's called a sensory diet to help the child learn to manage those sensory issues more effectively. You can think about prenatal alcohol exposure as a TBI in the womb, a traumatic brain injury in the womb, and it literally kills the neurons, so they just never develop. And when you kill them, even though we generate new neurons our whole life, when you kill them like that in the womb, they never have a chance. So that's why their brains are small and don't have a chance. But it doesn't mean they're not plastic and can't change. It puts them at a significant disadvantage. Many children with sensory issues get labeled as bad children or have behavioral issues when they're actually having a stress response to sensory overload is really what happens. You have to think for yourself what it would be like if you go in and you felt the tag in your clothes all day, and how that would feel and how it would be hard to concentrate. And if you try to put yourself in those shoes, you can see why OT can help intervene and help with those things. And the answer can be as simple as tagless clothes or cutting the tags out of clothes. We've had instances where we put colored tape around a child's desk and say, you can fidget as long as it's within this tape. Another strategy is to place the child on a therapy ball and have them sit on the therapy ball. That allows them to fidget kind of naturally without distracting other children. So it's all individualized. A child that had poor oral motor control, so they didn't have good lips, and so they drooled, and they were in the second grade. And drooling in the second grade, totally socially inappropriate. So the OT got these like cool looking sweatbands that the kid wore on his wrist, and that was what he wiped to get rid of the drool. So it didn't look like uncool or socially inappropriate, and so he could kind of do that without it being obvious, and he had different ones and different styles to match his clothes. I thought that was a great strategy. Children with FASD, a lot of times you see damage to the frontal lobe of the brain, and the frontal lobe is your inhibition, your executive functioning. So that's the part of your brain that you may think a curse word, but it doesn't come out. But children with FASD struggle because they have damage to that area. So they may say that curse word, or they may say, wow, your shirt is really ugly, and they don't have the ability, because of the brain damage, to realize the social consequences of that. They may comment on a picture on Facebook and it sounds very mean, but they're just being very honest about what they observe, very concrete, because abstract thought is very challenging because of the brain damage from prenatal alcohol exposure. Anyone can post something on Facebook, even a normal person, and be misinterpreted or be mistaken. I mean, that happens all the time with people that are very intelligent. So I would say minimize the use and exposure to social media. Children with ADHD, which is very high prevalence in kids with FASD, they love media because it's constantly changing the environment, and that's how their brain kind of works. They can jump from one thing to the other very efficiently. That doesn't work well in our school environments where you're expected to pay attention to something, but with media that works really well because you can switch and it goes fast, and they can play video games for hours because it's constantly changing. Parents of children with FASD should definitely seek out an occupational therapist. Don't struggle if your child has sensory issues or is struggling in school. There's people that can help you, and an occupational therapist is a great place to start because they'll work with your child on those daily, day-to-day things, and we understand, at least can empathize working with other parents, what it means like to parent a child with these disabilities, and that it is possible, connecting you and getting you support and resources to help with your child. And each child is unique, and we understand that in occupational therapy.